Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. Our Women Worth and Wellness has now gone global, which is amazing. And with that in mind, I want to show you my lovely purchase from the secondhand shop in Collingwood. It just looks like this is what in the world is going on. And you know what? Every day is International Women's Day. We women have a lot to offer, and this event today has three amazing speakers who are going to share their Embrace Equity story. Our theme, Women Worth and Wellness 2023, is Daring and Caring Women Leaders for Positive Impact. And we know that post-COVID, a lot of women are rethinking, what next? Lots of challenges with family, with are people going to come to the office and work? I mean, you name it, lots and lots of challenges. And the whole reason why we picked that theme is we want women to keep on going. The world needs lots of women leaders. And our whole program is here to help you support and advance and make the positive impact that we know that you can. Before we go on, I'd like to thank our sponsors. That's why these events are no charge. And we have Paul Chapman, who's been a terrific sponsor. This is our fourth year working together, and he's just a super terrific guy. Lots of support, lots of credentials, and lots of, what I love is responsiveness. So a really, really great guy. We've also got Crystal, who's come on as a sponsor. And again, I couldn't do these events without Crystal. We also have Duntroon Highlands with Martin and Stacy, and that's where Paul and I host our golf tournament, which is September the 14th. I'll turn it over to Paul to say a few words, and then Crystal maybe say a few words, and then you can introduce Imogen, our first speaker.
Thanks, Nancy. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Good. No, I won't say much, but I'm just like to say I'm certainly and always proud to be a champion of this initiative and this community that you've built. And along the theme of embracing equity, I'm certainly inspired by the speakers and continuing engagement and progress made through their leadership and conversations here. So I was encouraged and reinvigorated, frankly. This past weekend, I was at a board retreat offsite for United Way Simcoe Muskoka, where I sit on the board, and it was great to get everyone together. But it reminded me that we need to have continued focus and effort with respect to proactive.
Now you can't hear it, right?
Correct. Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, I hear people talking, but anyway. No, I just wanted to say, we need intentional action on these key issues like gender equity and systemic and structural barriers. So it takes effort and support from everyone and all stakeholders and challenging conversations to create this change, and starting with our leaders. And we have some great leaders with us today. So I'll send it back to you, Nancy, and you can introduce them.
Okay, Crystal, do you want to say a few words about your business?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. I'll keep this short and sweet. My mission and vision is to support amazing leaders like Nancy to get the message out and to have a positive impact in this world. I support women entrepreneurs who want to get their message online, and we support with however that looks like. So I'm here today to embrace equity and to share the positive message. Thanks, Nancy.
Okay, so perhaps you can introduce Imogen, our number one rock star in the lineup of speakers today.
Yes, I would happy to. All right, there's people coming in here. There we go. Imogen Coe. I am excited to hear from her today. Dr. Imogen Coe is a professor of chemistry and biology and former founding dean of the Faculty of Science of Toronto Metropolitan University in Toronto. She's also an affiliate scientist at St. Michael's Hospital, Toronto, where her research group studies drug uptake. In addition to being an academic scientist, Dr. Coe is one of Canada's leading advocates for organizational change toward inclusion, excellence in research, particularly science and medicine. She runs a consulting company providing advice and training on inclusive excellence and has advised academia, research organizations, and federal funding agencies, amongst others, on how to integrate equity, diversion, and inclusion principles into diverse research cultures. How perfect. We are very honored to have you here today, Imogen. Please join us online.
Thank you. So is it over to me now?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. It's always delightful, and I can almost never say no to Nancy. I want to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from what's known as Williams Treaty lands. These were disputed until 2018. And just to remind everybody that the land that we are doing our work on is land that has been lived on for many thousands of years. I'm in with the Dish with One Spoon territory, ancestral lands of the Huron-Wendat, the Mississaugas of Scugog. And I want to acknowledge that as a scientist trained in the Western European tradition, there is great wisdom and knowledge and leadership and understanding of the world that has been acquired by those who've lived here for thousands of years. And that we, as scientists, need to work much harder at humility and engaging, embracing the learnings and the teachings of those people who know a lot, that sometimes we don't exist in an equitable environment. And so that's part of my journey as a scientist. And I want to acknowledge where I am doing my work. But as you can tell, probably from my accent, I was raised in the UK and went to school through high school and university there. And like all children, I was born with curiosity. All children are natural scientists. Every kid starts out as a natural scientist because they are curious about the world. And I was very fortunate to have parents who were very supportive of my curiosity and my passion for understanding, particularly the living world, the nature and animals and things like that. And importantly, my parents did not embrace gender stereotypes. They embraced equity, particularly my father. He did not have any time for any complaining about not being able to do math or physics or anything like that. Both my parents really expected my sisters and my brother and I to get on and do everything, whether it be sports or creative arts or music or science or the humanities. I was raised in an environment where it was really normal. It was really normalized for us to be able to pursue our passions. And that's despite the fact that my parents in many ways were gender stereotyped. My father went out to work, my mother stayed home. But they came from very low socioeconomic backgrounds, very humble backgrounds. My grandparents never finished high school. And they recognized that education for everybody and opportunity and access to opportunity was the route for social mobility, the route for a better life. And so we really had these values that we were raised with of integrity, respect for all people, regardless of where they came from, and compassion and the importance of community. And so those are values that I've really carried with me along in parallel with my passion for science. And this sense of humanity is something that really isn't focused on enough as a core of the world of STEM, with the Western concept of scientists being impartial, objective observers of the universe. This is nonsense. We are part of what we are observing, and we are human. Scientists are human. And so when we embrace our humanity and we can actually calibrate against our biases, against our inherent cultural conditioning that we all have, not because we're bad, because we're humans, if we can actually do that, we are better scientists. So this is one of the messages that I have really tried to promote, which is to embrace your central fundamental humanity, be compassionate, think about other people, think about your own biases, think about the way you were raised and your values, and use that to help you calibrate and be a better scientist. It's ironic in many ways that this is actually the way that an indigenous science would be pursued, in that the observer is part of what is being observed. And then so that's one of the things that we can really learn from our colleagues who come from backgrounds having lived on this continent for many thousands of years. We need to take ourselves into account as one of the variables. So as I said, my father saw no reason why I shouldn't pursue math or physics or any of the scientists. It was normal. It was normal. And so that's another thing in terms of embracing equity. We really need everyone, and especially men and fathers, but also women and mothers, to normalize these human activities. Doesn't matter what they are. Science, coding, robotics for girls. Just go and look at the clothes that are on sale in Joe Fresh or in, or the toys. Look at the things that are marketed for girls, marketed for boys. We need to normalize nursing and ballet, the creative arts for boys. We need to embrace equity for all the children across all of the genders. I was very fortunate to consider a career in the sciences without really having it be presented as weird, or as one of my former students said, exceptional. She pursued an education and a graduate program, several graduate programs in medical physics. And she said it was exhausting to sometimes be treated as if she was this unicorn, this mythical, wondrous, amazing thing. It made her feel as othered as those who were sort of getting the messages that they didn't belong. So in terms of embracing equity, I would really encourage everybody to challenge gender stereotyping across the genders for all kids. Give boys and girls all the colors, all the toys. Pink is a color that was originally directed for boys because it was a light version of red, which was the color of the military uniform for men in the British Army. So pink was a boy color until about the early 1900s, when there was another cultural change, which suddenly became a female color, and pale blue was actually a little girl's color. So these are cultural things. There is no pink gene. There is no math gene. So please challenge gender stereotyping, give kids all the colors, all the toys, all the books. And that would go a long way to challenging the gender disparity in STEM. There's a great organization that I recommend looking up called Let Toys Be Toys. It's in the UK, but it calls out media and marketing for gender stereotyping kids. And that's something we need more of in Canada. After I did high school and university, I came to Canada as an international graduate student. I wanted adventure. I was also still passionate about science, but I was also aware that not everybody got to do what I wanted to, what I was doing. So I was aware that there were these barriers, there were these messages, subtle messages at times, overt messages at other times, that people couldn't do what it was I was able to do. And I was very fortunate to build a career. I spent 3 years in the US at San Francisco General Hospital as one of the campuses of the University of California at San Francisco. I came back to Canada, to the University of Alberta in oncology and biochemistry, and ultimately ended up in Ontario at York University as a chair and then an associate dean, and then recruited to TMU, which was formerly known as Ryerson, as the founding dean. So I built a very successful career as an academic research scientist. But along that pathway, I could see that lots of other people didn't have the opportunities I had. The system is not equitable. It does not embrace equity. Whether we're talking about education, academia, science, engineering, medicine, there are systemic barriers. There's institutionalized misogyny and racism. Oh, the stories I could tell you. Homophobia, colonialism, ableism, ageism. Little things like the walls of dudes in schools of medicine, the fact that the engineering building at the University of Toronto didn't have women's washrooms on every other floor because obviously they weren't there, they didn't belong. So in parallel, all the way along, particularly once I became a sort of an executive level, I used my privilege and I used my platform to really promote advocacy and action for increased inclusion in science at the systems level. It's not about inspiring girls to get into STEM, but by calling out the pervasive and persistent barriers that prevent so many from getting in, and the cultures and climates that end up with so many that do get in eventually leaving, particularly in tech and computer science, physics. And there are many ways to address systemic barriers and many ways to embrace equity. So one of the things we've heard a lot about, for instance, is mentoring. We certainly need mentors, and I've had mentors, but we also need champions and sponsors. And so one of the things I really encourage people to do is to think about that trifecta of mentors, champions, and sponsors. What are you? My dad was my first champion. He cheered me on. He didn't mentor me. He just was behind me, cheering me on, saying, of course you can do this. Of course you can do this, normal. Get on with it, just do it. It can be your grandma. It could be a peer. It could be somebody in your community cheering you on. And it's certainly something that men can do. And all along, I've had champions, and for many women in STEM, partners need to be champions. They need to be behind, cheering on, and be equal partners, and to challenge those stereotypes. And in fact, the data and research tell us that fathers who hold non-traditional gender stereotypes are more likely to raise daughters who enter STEM careers. So there's huge influence here, and a huge potential for positive impact. Raise sons to be feminists. We're really afraid of saying that out loud in Canada, I find. Raise your boys to be feminists. We spend so much time making a big deal of doing things about girls in STEM. And I've had teams of young women in robotics competitions where we focus on them, and they're so inspirational. And they have told us, please, would you go and work with the boys and the coaches and the men, because they're the ones that cause the issues. They're the ones that need upskilling and need more education and training. And so we really need to look at really empowering men and boys to embrace equity. And that means flipping the script. So flipping the script from this deficit model that there's something that we need to fix. We need to inspire them. We need to build confidence. We need to show them role models. We need to, we need to get them to lean in, that kind of thing. None of those things are inherently bad, but they won't have any effect unless we're also looking at the culture and the context and the climate. So we really want to move from that deficit, there's something that needs to be fixed, to that asset. They are incredible assets. The young women that I come across in my role as a professor, as an advocate, as somebody who speaks to many groups across the country over many years now, the sheer amount of talent and creativity and brilliant ideas out there is phenomenal. And we're a small population in a big country, and we're trying to compete on a global scale. There are assets out there, and the deficits sit in the systems. The systems are deficit ridden. And so if we really start to ask, why are you as an organization or a corporation or an industry or a sector letting these deficits happen, go out and get the assets. It might just change the conversation a little bit and change the focus a little bit. Perhaps start, instead of asking why what was such and such a demographic underrepresented, start asking the question, why is this demographic overrepresented? Ask that question. Why is it that this demographic, often straight, white, middle-class, middle-aged men, but not always, why is this demographic overrepresented? How did that happen? Because that's not what the world looks like. That's not the way the world is made up. So just flipping the script and asking things in a slightly different way can put a little bit of a different perspective on things. So that's something that, I think in terms of embracing equity, let's think about looking at things from an asset-based approach instead of a deficit-based approach, particularly from my world, which is the STEM. So we can all be champions and sponsors. I consider myself to be a much better champion and sponsor than a mentor. I don't like saying do it like me, but I can be a sponsor. I connect people. I invite people I make recommendations for people, ask them to give a talk, not me. I connect people. And it's something that we can all do. You don't have to be in the discipline. You don't have to be in the profession. And we really need champions. And it's tough right now, particularly for young people in the sciences, but in all sorts of professions and career pathways. So I think we need a lot of champions. I think we need to challenge people to think about their roles as champions, sponsors, perhaps mentors. Think about what you can be. Doesn't matter who you are, we can all do something. And those roles might change over time, and our own teams of champions, sponsors, and mentors might change over time. So my take-home message for Embrace Equity is, whether you're male or female, however you identify, you could be a champion, a sponsor, a mentor. You can focus on flipping the script, thinking about things from a different perspective. And we can all play a role in challenging gender stereotyping. So all those little packages of potential, those little kids, packages of potential full of assets, can achieve their full potential. And that's embracing equity. So thank you very much. And I will hand it back to, I think, Crystal, right?
Nancy.
Me, I'm back. I was just putting something in the chat to just simply say, Imogen, I've always known you as somebody who has much integrity and respect and much compassion, always. I mean, as we've interacted, that's how I know you. Two things. One is, we had one of our events last year. We were talking about how do you raise young women to be powerful. And we had a mother on who's the mother of 3 sons. And I think the oldest son is probably 11 or so. Anyway, she said, my contribution to them being feminists is I teach them that no means no. Now, obviously, they don't understand the context in which she's reinforcing, but that in itself is flipping the switch and just As a parent, she knew what she was doing, and she knows that that is really, really powerful. Can you share, because I know you've just recently won a big award, and congratulations. Tell us about calling out. When did you call somebody out where you knew it wasn't right and that things needed to change a little bit?
Oh, gosh.
I know there are many. We just need one.
So a classic one is panels, right? Panels, all white male panels, at conferences and that kind of thing. So on several occasions, I have called out a list of people who are speaking and said, why is it all of the, why does it look this way? And I've done that in situations where people have sent me emails, sort of personally, secretly, and said, thank you so much. And I said to them, actually, in one case, two male colleagues, one in Spain, one in the US. It was a big international conference. The list of speakers was, it was all male. And I called it out publicly, globally, to the listserv for this particular conference. And these two men who I consider to be very good men, very good friends, sent me emails separately, privately, saying, thank you so much, I agree completely. And I said, would you please do that publicly? And both of them said, no, I can't do that. That'll, jeopardize my position. And so I did that, and I'm sure it had an impact. I didn't get invited, but, calling out is something I can do because I have a lot of privilege, which means I have a lot of responsibility. But you also have to be careful about where you do it so that you're safe to do it and that you know that you can be impactful, I think. So yes, I try to do that as much as I can.
Right, and it goes back to your values of integrity and respect. So you pick your compassion carefully.
Right.
Okay, Crystal, back to you, and perhaps introduce Jennifer, if you will. Thank you, Imogen. That was super.
Yes, I would be honored to. Our next speaker today is Jennifer Laidlaw. Jennifer Laidlaw. She is a transformational leader, advisor, and coach who works with CEOs and senior executives to develop and deliver on bold, unprecedented change initiatives that result in powerful legacies aligned with strategy, people, and purpose. With almost 20 years of experience that spans multiple sectors, including the corporate, regulatory, public, and nonprofit sectors, Jennifer is a highly effective mobilizer of internal and external partnerships, strategic stakeholder alliances, and broad networks that produce extraordinary outcomes. Jennifer, we are very honored to have you here today. Please join us online, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Crystal. It's truly an honor to be here. Thank you so much to Nancy and Paul as well, and the sponsors for this event. I will quickly acknowledge that I do live and work in Toronto. That is a traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is also home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and also is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. So acknowledging my appreciation for being able to live and work in this amazing city. Like many of you here, I've been at this for a while and want to echo so many of Imogen's amazing comments. I love flipping the script. I love the deficit to asset, and as well have been spending a lot of time engaging men in the powerful role that they have to play. So really happy to be with you here to celebrate International Women's Day. I really see this as leveling the playing field. Equity is key in our goal for equality. And so I'm going to look at three important levers for change today, and I'm going to start with organizations. Incredibly important work is happening with campaigns and organizations here in Canada and globally. It's way beyond time for companies to step up and address systemic issues. We can't individually resolve these issues, inequities that exist as part of a system that has been built with privilege and for privilege over many, many years. And yet we're seeing some hopeful change. The 30% Club Canada is teaming up with the 50/30 Challenge launched by the federal government and the tremendous work of the Diversity Institute, brilliantly led by Dr. Wendy Souquier. Together, we're partnering with organizations to chart the way forward so that our members and signatories can not only aspire to equity, but also have access to the tools and resources that will enable equity. We've been activating CEOs, chairs, and board directors, and many of them men, to be intentional role models of change, to embrace equity. And we have seen progress. More and more companies are treating inclusion and diversity like the business priority it is, from setting targets to holding leaders accountable for results. And since the 30% Club was built in Canada back around 2015, the TSX Composite has moved from 16% women in C-suites and 17% on boards to 22 and 33% respectively as of the end of last year. So yeah, there's progress, and obviously more needs to be done, particularly to ensure that all women with a broad range of intersecting identities and lived experience are reflected in leadership roles within organizations and on the boards governing them. So if your company is not a member of the 30% Club or a signatory of the 50/30 Challenge, you might want to ask why. Signaling commitment to change in a public way is really important for organizations that care what their stakeholders and team members, current and potential, really want to see. So I invite you to reach out if you'd like to learn more about the ways in which we're engaging our members, the ecosystem that the Diversity Institute is building with their partners for the 50/30 Challenge members, or if you'd like your organization to become a member. Signing up is super easy and gives you access to loads of resources, research, and data, as well as their diversity assessment tool and the What Works toolkit. They also have online workshops and training modules, and upcoming leadership development program is on the way. So please feel free to reach out, and I'll ensure that you are hooked up to the right people. The second lever for embracing equity is leadership. We're seeing the need for leaders to facilitate cultures that activate and empower peak performance and sustainable results. And we know that the only way to do this well is for those cultures to be fueled by individual and collective well-being, resilience, and clarity. We can't fool ourselves any longer. Thrive Global has been saying this for years. We need to shift from getting the most out of some members of our teams to getting the best out of all of them. And we can't get that when they're suffering, when they're merely coping, or even surviving. We need to empower all employees, including all women and equity deserving groups, to grow, succeed, and thrive. We need to shift from engagement to empowerment. As Arianna Huffington says, the fact is that well-being, high performance, productivity, and efficiency are all on the same side of the ledger. Empowerment comes when we focus on connection, collaboration, and communication, from deep listening to understand versus argue or debate, placing a high value on authentic relationships, understanding the implications of separate realities, and prioritizing service. So we know that when we have equity built into our organizations and their systems and their structures, and we have leaders who are empowering their teams to achieve peak performance by facilitating those cultures where everyone belongs and thrives, then we will have set a very fine table to fully embrace equity. And that leads us to the third lever, because I'm here to ask you to consider, just to consider how you, how I, each of us can better embrace equity for ourselves. If we want to see that change in our lives, we need to lean in to equity for us. We know that leaders may have bias, unconscious or otherwise. They may more easily see potential in men than women. They may recognize strategic thinking in men more frequently than women. But we also know And it has been proven time and again that women are harsher critics of our own performance than men are of theirs. We are hard on ourselves. We are so hard on ourselves. Regardless of how smart, talented, capable, successful, how far we've climbed, and how many achievements, it's still so much easier to recognize it consistently in others. It's why when we leave this inspiring event this afternoon and we head back to the physical or virtual office, and we happen to see a posting for a role a level higher or with a bigger, broader mandate, or that we just know is our dream job, many of us will pause and say, oh, that would be so great. But I may not be qualified. I haven't mastered all the skills they're looking for. If they wanted to promote me, they would have by now. I'll never get it anyway. I'm not sure now is even the right time. And what will people think? And on and on. We often, not always, but often, completely innocently get in our own way. Why? Because we've drunk the Kool-Aid. We've been taught. We've had role models and conditioned to play safe, play small, take up less space, ask for less, expect less, believe it will be harder, take longer, and will absolutely require significant sacrifice. And none of it has to be true. So yes, organizations and leaders need to stop thinking they need to fix women, but so do we. It's our time to acknowledge, to yell from the rooftops. Imogen said it earlier today, that there is nothing wrong with us. You are not broken. You do not need to be fixed or self-developed or self-helped. Of course, we're all going to need to build skills, knowledge, and gain experience that will help us in our roles, but not to be more of you, to be a better version of you, to up-level yourself. You are, we all are, wisdom, well-being, and resilience at our core. And it's time to let our inner selves shine. The key to unlocking your true potential, new opportunities, and living the life and career of your dreams is simply being yourself, by you being you, embracing your uniqueness as the source of your greatest expression and your competitive edge. We tell and retell made-up stories that we have convinced ourselves are real, that we're limited at what we can be, do, and have. And it's time to see these stories for what they are. We don't have to change them. We can simply notice that they're not true. They don't mean anything, and they don't have to be taken seriously. Take, for example, comfort zones. They're made up. You can't put your comfort zone into your purse. It's not real. It's a story that's meant to keep you playing small, innocently self-imposed. We're taught that feeling comfortable is necessary for us to be confident and perform at our best. But comfort's just a feeling. It's not telling us about the situation. It's only telling us about our thinking about the situation. The same with confidence. We were born confident. We trusted that we could just do it. We knew it would take experimenting, trying things out, getting it totally wrong before we got it right. Being harder on ourselves as we learn something new is not built in. That's learned. Now I want to pause here because there's going to be some of us, likely a lot of us, that will see the truth of this, that we are way too hard on ourselves, and we'll find ourselves hearing that voice in our heads that is so mean and really quite rude. And we'll think, well, there I go again. What an idiot. I'm doing it to myself again. First, that's the exact opposite of the point. Beating ourselves up for beating ourselves up is really not the point. We need to put a hard stop to all self-blaming and shaming. We are all doing the best we can with the quality of thinking we have in this moment. But also, just in case no one has told you, that voice in your head that is hard on you, it's not you. It's not yours. It's not true. It's just a bunch of conditioned thinking. Seriously, thoughts appear in your mind. You don't put them there. They just sound like you. So the moment you realize that you don't have to listen to those voices, and you definitely don't need to fight with them or to try to change them, because by the way, we have over 70,000 thoughts a day. So that alone would be a full-time job, but you can simply take them less seriously. That's a game changer. And remember, the voice in your head that's making you feel like you're not enough and should play small and safe, it's not a call to action. It's not a call to action. We can treat it like music and let it play in the background. It doesn't have to run the show. One of my favorite people in the world, Bo St. John, who is the former CMO of Netflix, YouTube, or Uber and iTunes and more, said it really well. She said, quote, "I feel like there's a lie that has been told to us, especially women, that somehow we have to put our head down, be understated, and be humble in order to gain respect." And I disagree wholeheartedly. I think we need to celebrate ourselves more. We need to show up. When we say we've done something, we need to take the credit. I love that quote. I've seen so many incredibly talented women hide their light, downplay their accomplishments, and hope someone out there will eventually reward them for their hard work. And unfortunately, that's not often true. So let's give ourselves more grace. Let's let things be a bit more easy and a lot less perfect. Let's acknowledge how much value we bring to the table. Let's celebrate our successes, the big ones, the little ones, and the ones in between. Let's give ourselves room to try it on and just see how it goes. Let's assume we can do it and do it well. Let's not use the word no we got yesterday to convince ourselves that it can't be a heck yeah today. Let's focus so much more on what we want than what we don't want, how it could work or how it could happen. Let's ask for a lot more support and then receive it when offered. Let's give ourselves a break. Let's be our best cheerleaders. Let's take what's ours. Let's embrace our humanity. Let's embrace equity for ourselves. Thank you.
Way to go, Jennifer. Way to go. I think a huge call to action, and I've been saying this a lot recently, is that we need to stop waiting to be invited. But going back to Imogen, you operate with integrity and respect. You know, you don't bowl people over. But at the same time, everybody has, especially women, have unique ability and unique leadership abilities. So by all means, move forward and stop waiting to be invited, because you've got much to offer. Thanks so much. And the 30% Club is an ongoing challenge for sure. And this week, as you know, is the Prospectors and Developers Convention in Toronto. And often the numbers are skewed because there aren't enough STEM women on those boards in those businesses to add that, increase that percentage. So again, STEM is so important to get more women stepping up and doing everything that Imogen's doing, and certainly stepping up and getting more women on boards and being champions like you are. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will turn it over to Crystal, who will introduce Lisa. And again, Lisa is someone who was one of our first speakers in January, along with Karen from the UK. And Lisa's involved with everything. She's a rock star. I would encourage everybody to sign on to LinkedIn with each of our three speakers, Imogen, Jennifer, and Lisa. And you will be connected to so much that what in the world is going on. So Crystal, over to you to briefly introduce Lisa. And she has some incredible news to share with us.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. And speaking of connecting with LinkedIn, if each speaker could put your LinkedIn URL into the chat, and so people know where to find you, that would be fantastic. All right, last but certainly not least, we have Lisa Gable. She is a keynote speaker and writer on partnership, mentorship, diversity, relationship building, and big ideas. Her mission is to support the next generation of leaders and organizations that are solving the world's biggest problems. She is a Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author and recognized as an innovative business global businesswoman and diplomat who leads with discipline and diplomacy. And as Nancy said, she has some big news to share with us today. Very excited and honored to have you back with us, Lisa. Over to you.
Great, thank you so much. And Jennifer, that was beautiful, and I couldn't think of a more moving conversation to follow. Today, my focus is on mentorship. To me, mentorship is something that something that builds bonds for a lifetime. It's not just a moment, it's not transactional, it's a relationship. And I want to tell you all a story because it has meaning for me today, which is that 16 years ago, I met a young woman. She was Albanian. Her family had fled communism and come to the United States. And she approached me and said, I'm starting an international magazine, and I want you to be on my board. I was so impressed with the vision that she laid out. It turned out that she'd already recruited a member of the House of Lords to be also her first board member. She was asking me to join her as number 2. Her name is Anna Rold. And I'm so excited today that I get to tell you all that 16 years later, the Diplomatic Courier, which is the magazine that she started, is one of the premier bipartisan, nonpartisan magazines that is read throughout capitals across the world by both business leaders as well as government leaders. Anna started something in 2012 called The World in 2050. It came out of the G20 summit. And what we're talking about at the summit, where she was a participant, is the need for a think tank, a do tank that would do research and build ideas labs, seeking to answer challenging questions about the future of society and galvanize solutions through uncommon collaborations. Anna's magazine is read by 9 million people annually. She gets between 600,000 to 900,000 readers going through the materials that are provided by people from all over the world in these thought leadership positions. And today we announced that I have agreed to be the chairman of World in 2050. When you look back on the relationship that Anna and I've had for the last 16 years, it's benefited me as a mentor and it's benefited her as a mentee. We've been through each other through the ups and downs of incredible personal challenges, medical challenges for our family members. I've watched her continue to build and advocate for, again, non-biased conversation that brings together people from all different backgrounds with all different perspectives, a focus on what it is that we need to do to focus on the future. One of the key questions that we're asking is how will major global forces such as demographic changes, resource stress, technology, and economic power shifts change our future? And the conversation we're having today that Imogen and Jennifer laid out and that Nancy has laid out is that we as women are sitting here ready to lead. And the key to having the future that arrives well for the next generations will mean that we need to pass the baton 3 times between now and 2050. If you think about it, there are going to be 3 different decades, 3 different periods where we're going to need to intentionally pull up the next generation of leaders and give them the resources and support they need as women in order to be successful. I'm going to give you just an overview of some of the top topics that we're talking about, which are exponential changes, big megatrends that are going to affect us, opportunities where women who are on this conversation can have impact. One is exponential technologies radically reshaping the world. As I look at today, we have Elon Musk talking about and investing in colonizing Mars. We have amazing changes in biopharma, and we have the advent of AI, quantum, and machine learning. But the key to all of this is equality of access and just usage of these exponentially life-changing technologies. We're looking at disruption from climate change. Energy transition is only the beginning, and that requires corporate national targets and accountability. It requires women being part of the solutions, because if you think about it, women are some of the people that are most greatly impacted. Women happen to be in Latin America the ones who do the majority of the farming, as well as around the world. Those women are impacted by different elements of climate, and yet they don't get to inherit the land that they farm. So how do we bring them into the table? How do we use the network that's here today to help those women? We also have an opportunity where we're seeing the workplace caring less about education and more about skills. Why is that important? Because there are a lot of women who've not been able to return to school because of needs of family members, children, adult relationships with their parents who might need medical care. They need the opportunity to have remote or hybrid work. We have the great resignation and quiet quitting because women, as well as men, but women are particularly pulled by both ends of the spectrum, their children and their parents. And we have things around data ownership and privacy. Another area that we'll be focusing on is societal distrust and fragmentation that are surging. Again, we as women have the opportunity to be at the forefront of addressing misinformation, disinformation, fake news. We have the opportunity to help with issues around distrust and societal fragmentation. And we have the opportunity to ensure that there is gender equity. Within that context, we're looking at things like democratic governance and institutions under even greater and greater pressure. Weakening alliances, weakening of democracy and the rule of law. We see this in the Ukraine, and we see unfortunate things taking place in Asia driven by the Chinese. So again, women, as we saw in the Ukraine, are stepping forward. Women leaders with whom I've worked, who are business leaders in that country, women who are continuing to work and raise the voices of their families, of their men who are fighting, and the women who are fighting in that country. One of the critical things that they're fighting about is issues around the Russians not only going in and taking over their country, but secondarily removing their children and their young women from the country. So we as women have the opportunity to raise their voices, to raise the voices of the weaker women who are facing serious challenges within China. So I look forward to working with each and every one of you through this process. Again, I want to highlight something which to me is very special. 16 years ago, I took a bet on a 26-year-old woman. We've continued to work for 16 years together to do great things. I had an opportunity to be a participant in Davos this year. I've never participated in Davos before. And guess who brought me? I was brought by Anna Rold, the woman that I said yes to 16 years ago, to be her guest as she was speaking about issues around AI and technological changes that are going on in the world. So think about your women, think about who it is that's in your network, and recognize that through our intentional actions, we are bringing women forward. We are changing the world together. And I look forward to changing the world and helping it arrive well in 2050 with the women who are on this call.
The best. Thanks so much, Lisa. It's really interesting that you say, what was the three separate cycles of mentoring?
Yes, is that I have an article coming out tomorrow about this, which is, think about it, there are 3 decades between now and 2050. And if you think about women leaders, they're really talking about 3 cycles of women leaders, right? I turned 59 in a week and I go back to 40 years ago. I've already covered off on 4. 4 decades. So we've got 3 decades of women that we need to intentionally think about them entering into each decade and what leadership roles we give them. Because I don't know about you, Nancy, but I'm going to be tired by 2050, maybe a little old by 2050.
Well, I remember you commenting about turning 59, like you were turning 99. And I said, please Google Hazel McCallion, who just passed away at almost 102. And she was a rock star right until the end. But
she was, and I bet she mentored a lot of women.
She mentored in an incredible amount, and our hockey team sometimes beat the US. And of course, she was a huge champion of women playing hockey. And of course, winning on the global stage, she was always there. So great, great, great. But when I started Women Worth and Wellness, I focused on boomer women and their daughters. Well, what the penny has finally dropped that, you know what? It's time for the boomers to focus on the daughters, because to your point, you know, they are the future, and passing along wisdom and wellness, I think, is extremely important. So good for you to remind us. Anyway, I won't take up more time, but Crystal, there are probably some questions in the chat to bring forward to Lisa and maybe Imogen and Jennifer.
Yes, we have some, well, first of all, some great comments. So speakers, if you haven't seen the comments in there, please do. I'll just recap a little bit. Inez said, love flipping the script model from Imogen, from deficit to asset. We are trying to do this for brain health rather than focusing on sick care model of disease. We need to think about prevention, and I couldn't agree more. And we are marginalizing men and other genders and thinking that only women can mentor and champion, where anybody can be a mentor or a champion to sponsor women. We have a question for Jennifer. How do you monitor that signatories to the 50-30 challenge translate their commitment into concrete actions? Too often, diversity does not happen at the levels of senior leadership and boards where decisions are made and the tone is really set. So what would you say to that?
It's a great question. Thanks for the person who put it forward. And so there's two different campaigns. There's 30% Club and 50-30. 50-30 is newer. It just started the end of 2020, and they are working on ways to measure progress. The 30% Club actually measures progress based on the TSX composite, as I had mentioned. And we do also an assessment on where companies are that are members versus that are not on the composite. And we also have a very strategic, incredibly powerful investor group of the 30% Club. There is one in Canada, there's one in the US, in the UK, and elsewhere, and we're starting to build an international model. And they are incredibly powerful at having engaging conversations with companies that are listed and who are not providing evidence that they're taking this as seriously as they need to. And so they meet on a quarterly basis, identify companies that are falling behind or have not made the progress that they'd like to see that they are investing in, and they have conversations collectively with those companies. And so that is a really powerful way. Companies are becoming more and more at the mercy of their stakeholders and their shareholders. And so that is becoming a really powerful way for all of us to hold these companies accountable.
Lisa, more and more we're getting to in-person events, and I'm wondering if it might be a good idea sometime in the next year or so to have Lisa come as a guest speaker to some of the 30% Club CEOs, because I think there's so much going on in the world, and we all want to make a difference and do our best to make the world a better place, but where are those sweet spots to make that happen? When Lisa was talking about Ukrainian women and of course children being scooped and going to Russia, you just go, oh my goodness, what next? But also the young girls in Iran that are being poisoned.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never ending. So if we can get to CEOs of corporations and appeal to them, perhaps there are some leveraging opportunities.
Absolutely. It's so important. And one of the things you had asked me to mention Davos, one of the reasons I went to Davos was to participate in the various activities that were being put on by Shelley Zalis and the Female Quotient, as well as by APCO and others, and MasterCard. You really saw this large gathering of women at Davos. We may not have all had the very most special tickets to get into the most special of places, but we had good tickets, and we were out there and we were talking, and we were actually changing minds. And that's what we have to do together, is change minds and make people aware. We have gone backwards. As you said, Iranian girls are being poisoned. Their schools are being blown up. Afghanistan, women were given power and then it was taken all away from them. We're not in the best position right now. We're kind of creeping back.
Right. And one of our guests is Sherry Graydon. She was one of our guest speakers in mid-January, and she focuses on informed opinions. And Canada is slipping terribly with having females in political roles. I mean, there are countries that are doing, we think that we're a feminist country, but guess what? We're slipping all the time. So she has an event coming up at the end of March when we're going to get together and hear what she has to say and talk about some possibilities, because more female political leaders, I think, are extremely important. Any other questions, Crystal? Maybe Imogen is, I'm sure.
61st in countries in Canada. We've slipped significantly over the last few years. And so, as you said, the informed opinions work is called Balance of Power, and you can look it up online and absolutely see that we have so far to go when it comes to ensuring that women's voices are in all of the important spaces.
Imogen.
Yes. I don't have anything to add. I agree with
Well-
everything they said.
Well, one of the big things, of course, that we all talk about is getting more women on boards. And somebody made the profound question. Well, guess what? Once they get there, what are they going to do? You know, is it all about them? I'm now on a board. Once you get on the board, are you going to step up and are you going to make the difference that we all hope that you will?
So one thing, a colleague of mine, Michael Charles, who's VP of equity or whatever at Centennial College, who has a background in law, and he's a remarkable scholar, Black scholar. One thing he said to me recently is diverse representation is not synonymous with EDI expertise. So there is the role of getting onto boards, of diversifying all of that leadership, but not at the expense of an accountability and an expectation that the old white guys on those boards, and sometimes it's the old white women on those boards, also develop those skills and those core competencies. So I'm a big fan of the core competencies. And I can tell you in my career in leadership, some of the biggest challenges I've had with bad behavior, with bullying, with toxic culture have come from women, white women. So, and some of the most powerful, impactful, positive individuals have been what you might call the dominant demographic. So I battle my cynicism because cynicism is very intellectually lazy. I battle that a little bit with things like the 50-30 and 30% club, because it's not just about the numbers. It's about the rest of the people who are there having the skills and expecting more of them. They're like, the old white guy shouldn't be on the board if he doesn't have the skill set. If he has the skill set, then he's going to create the environment that's going to allow women on those boards to actually flourish. You cannot plant seeds in barren land. It's very basic biology or farming or whatever. Planting seeds in sand is not going to yield you anything. Planting seeds in rich, fertile soil is going to allow things to flourish. So you have to ensure that the climate and the culture is ready for people to be on boards. And that means expecting more of the people that are already there. And I would like to say I'm available to sit on a mining board anytime.
Okay, well, good.
And I have sat on the Mining Innovation Council board. And I'm willing, because I have so much privilege that I'm in a very safe place to be able to call people out, but, and to say things that perhaps other people can't say. But I think we need to, and I've published about this in the healthcare sector, we need to expect leadership, whatever it looks like, to have these core skills. Like we expect them to have financial acumen, we expect them to have some kind of maybe leadership training. We expect them to have some kind of this. We also expect them to have EDI competencies. That's a core leadership skill for everybody. And so I think that's something to also remember. It's not all on the underrepresented group to do the work. It's on the dominant demographic to do the work.
Okay, do you know Deborah Rossetti?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right, I'll connect you with her because her business is Women Get on Boards. And she knows everybody. So I'll definitely connect you with her. She'll be delighted to meet you. And who knows? Who knows? The one final comment that I'll make is Women of Influence has just been taken over by a PhD, a really young emerging leader who is amazing. And she has just completed a really, really comprehensive survey on tall poppy syndrome. And so Google that and read it because it's really interesting. It's like, for example, if you're in a meeting and you're not being listened to, you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I'm out of here. And this is what happens. Corporations lose qualified people because they don't know how to treat them with respect and integrity to begin with. So tall poppy syndrome has all sorts of configurations to it. Anyway, it is now 1:30. We could go on for another week and a half. And of course, again, one of my goals long-term is to have a camp outing. So we all go into the wilderness. We don't have any social media and we just talk because we all know so much. And we've all got great ideas to help one another illuminate not just themselves, but one another. So stay tuned. Who knows when that will happen or if it ever will. But thank you so much to our guest speakers. Thank you, Imogen. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Lisa. We will all stay connected with you, and definitely Lisa with everything you're up to. And thank you again to Paul for being a sponsor, and Crystal for being a sponsor and all her support. Duntroon is where our golf tournament will be in September. But our next event that we're organizing is a Daring and Caring Women Leaders Mind, Body, Spirit, and Heart in-person event in June at the Toronto Hunt Club. So Crystal and I are going to go to work on that. I may ask some of you to come and be on a panel, because again, we really want to inspire these young women to keep going and to bring your leadership forward. So thank you, everybody. Have a great International Women's Day on March the 8th and every day in the year.
Thank you.